I never thought my life would take the turn it did last summer. My name is Jake, and I'm just a regular guy from Austin, Texas. I thought I had a solid marriage with my wife, Sarah. We were married for 5 years, had a cozy little house, and even a couple of dogs that we adored. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. But as I found out, things were far from rosy. Lately, I started noticing some changes in Sarah. She had always been the life of the party, but suddenly she seemed distant. She'd come home late from work, often claiming she had to handle urgent matters. At first, I believed her because, well, that's what you do in a relationship. You trust your partner. But as the days rolled into weeks, something gnawed at the back of my mind. At family gatherings, she'd be on her phone often, laughing at messages and quickly hiding the screen when I walked by. I chalked it up to work stress or maybe just wanting some space. Maybe I was just being paranoid. The tipping point came one evening when I decided to surprise her with a little romantic dinner. I left work early, bought her favorite wine, and cooked up a storm. I even had candles lit and some soft music playing. I was feeling great about how this night would turn out. But when she walked through the door, her reaction was off. Instead of the enthusiastic, "Wow, this is amazing," I expected, she looked flustered. Her hair was disheveled and she had this peculiar scent on her that wasn't her usual perfume. "Wow, Jake, this is nice," she said, trying to sound excited but failing miserably. "Just nice?" I asked, jokingly prodding. I thought it would be more than nice after a long day. "Just a lot on my mind," she replied, brushing it off. But I could tell something was up. Then days later, I found her phone on the kitchen counter. An instinct kicked in and I picked it up. I know, snooping is terrible, but curiosity got the better of me. As I scrolled through her messages, my heart sank. There were exchanges with a guy named Mark, texts filled with flirtation and plans to meet up. My mind raced. Mark, wasn't he the caterer from our wedding? The guy who had made that ridiculous cake that everyone raved about? I felt sick as I read more. They talked about their secret rendezvous and how she couldn't wait to see him again. It was like a punch to the gut. I had to confront her. I couldn't let this slide. The betrayal was right there in front of me, plain as day. When Sarah got home that night, I had the text messages loaded up on her phone. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. She could see it in my eyes. I was onto her. Fear bubbled in her demeanor, and I could see her brain racing to come up with a plausible excuse. "Jake, I can explain," she stammered, her typical confidence evaporating. "Explain? You're cheating on me with our wedding caterer," I spat, holding her phone as if it were a burning coal. "What kind of sick joke is this?" Her face paled. "It's not what you think. Mark and I were just having a fun time. It didn't mean anything." "Fun time?" I was furious. "How long has this been going on?" "You've been lying too." My face. She broke down, claiming it was just a silly fling, that she was feeling lost and confused. I had always supported her dreams, let her have her space. But here she was, betraying everything we built together. The confrontation was a whirlwind of accusations, tears, and desperate justifications on her part. I felt a cocktail of emotions bubbling up in me: rage, sadness, disbelief. In that moment, I realized that my world had been turned upside down. The woman I loved was not who I thought she was. My heart was shattered, but a strange resolve began to form. I wasn't going to let this slide. And that's when the idea of revenge started to creep into my mind. I didn't just want to confront her. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions. After that explosive confrontation, I was a mess. I couldn't think straight. I tossed and turned in bed, replaying every moment of our relationship, trying to pinpoint where I went wrong. Was I not attentive enough? Had I taken her for granted? All these questions spiraled in my head. But deep down, I knew one thing: I wouldn't be the one to suffer the consequences of her actions. I spent the next few days in a haze of anger and betrayal. Sarah tried to reach out to me, but I shut her down. I wasn't interested in her excuses or empty apologies. She talked about working it out, but how could I ever trust her again? Each time she called, I let it go to voicemail. I was done being the understanding husband. I needed to plot my revenge to make sure she regretted what she had done. I began to dig into Mark's life. It didn't take long to find out that he owned a small catering business called Gourmet on the Go. He had a decent reputation in town, known for his elaborate parties and exquisite dining experiences. but I could see the cracks. A few reviews online mentioned he was unprofessional and inconsistent. Maybe I could exploit that. I crafted a plan that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. I decided to use the very reviews that could tarnish his reputation. After all, he was a wedding caterer. If people stopped booking him for events, it would hit him hard. I wasn't just going to ruin his business. I was going to make sure that every time Sarah thought about fine dining, she'd remember her betrayal. I spent a few evenings creating fake accounts on review sites. I wrote scathing reviews about his food being undercooked, his staff being rude, and events being poorly managed. It felt dirty, but I couldn't help but enjoy the thrill that came with it. Each time I hit submit, it was like I was striking back not just at Mark, but at Sarah too. The next week, I decided to step it up a notch. I reached out to a few local event planners and mentioned my experience with Mark. I told them how he had ruined one of the most important days of my life, my wedding day. I recounted the countless issues we faced and how unprofessional he was. I didn't know if any of it was going to stick, but I had to try. Meanwhile, Sarah was becoming increasingly frantic about my silence. She sent me texts asking if we could talk, if we could go to couples therapy, if I could at least give her a chance to explain. But I ignored her. I couldn't have this conversation. Every time I thought about her, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. I had to keep my focus on my revenge. As the days passed, I saw Mark's reviews start to dip. People were beginning to notice the negative feedback. I knew I was making an impact, and it felt good. I felt like I was regaining some control over my life. But it wasn't just about Mark anymore. It was about making Sarah realize what she had lost. Still, the emotional toll was heavy. At night, as I lay in bed, I'd think about the good times we had shared, all the laughter and love. It hurt to remember how much I had invested in our relationship. But then I'd remind myself of the betrayal, the lies, and the way she had thrown it all away. That's when my anger would reignite. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. I overheard a conversation between Sarah and one of her friends at a coffee shop. I had followed her out of instinct. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but their words pierced through me like a dagger. "Jake is being so dramatic about it, I mean. It was just a little fling. He needs to get over himself." Sarah laughed, her tone so casual, so dismissive. I felt the blood drain from my face. She was downplaying everything, reducing our marriage to a mere joke. In that moment, I realized I had to escalate my plan even further. If she thought this was just a game, then I would make sure she understood the severity of her actions. I decided it was time for a more public approach. I would make sure that Mark realized his actions had consequences. I would call him out and ensure he faced the fallout from my revenge. The following day, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I could no longer hide in the shadows of my own anger. It was time to make my move. I had been playing a subtle game, but now it was time to confront Mark directly. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done, not just to me but to my marriage. It was time to shake things up. I had done my research on Mark's business, and I knew he was set to cater a big charity gala in town next month. This was perfect. I envisioned the scene, the glitz, the glamour, and all the influential people who would be in attendance. If I could disrupt that event in some way, it would send shockwaves through his career. I pictured Sarah in the crowd, watching as her little affair unraveled right before her eyes. I decided to approach the gala organizers anonymously. I crafted a carefully worded email that laid out Mark's unprofessional behavior and the negative experiences I had with him at my wedding. I emphasized that this was a charity event and that it was critical for the caterer to uphold a certain standard. I made sure to include snippets of the negative reviews I had been posting, painting a dark picture of Mark's catering service. I signed the email with a fake name, just to make sure I covered my tracks. That afternoon, I sat back, my heart racing as I hit send. I knew I was playing with fire, but it felt exhilarating to finally take an active role in my revenge. As the hours passed, I couldn't shake the anxious feeling in my gut. I was worried it might backfire. But then I remembered Sarah's laughter when discussing my drama. I'd be damned if I didn't take action. A few days later, I received a response from the gala organizers. They thanked me for the heads up and mentioned that they were reviewing Mark's application closely. My heart raced. I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, watching everything I had set in motion unfold. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her attempts to reach out to me. I saw the same texts coming in, filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. She even resorted to sending me photos from happier times, hoping to jog my memory and evoke some compassion. But every time I saw her face, I felt that familiar surge of anger. A part of me wanted to reply to tell her that I was done, but I fought back the impulse. I needed to stay strong. Then came the day of the charity gala. I drove past the venue on my way home, and my heart pounded as I saw the elegant decorations and well-dressed guests lining up at the entrance. It was surreal. I considered stepping inside, wanting to witness the fallout firsthand, but that wasn't part of my plan. I needed to remain in the background, watching from a distance as my revenge unfolded. Later that evening, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it turned out to be one of the gala organizers. "Hi, is this Jake?" the woman asked. My heart pounded in my chest. It was time to face the music. "Yes, that's me," I replied cautiously. "I wanted to thank you for your message," she continued. "We decided to go in a different direction for our catering after reviewing what you sent us. We just felt it was in the best interest of the event." A wave of satisfaction washed over me, but I quickly masked it. "I appreciate you taking my warning seriously," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's just important to ensure that events like this maintain their integrity." "Absolutely," she replied. "We've hired another catering service, and I'm sure it will be a success. Thank you again for reaching out." After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, a smirk creeping onto my face. I knew this would hit Mark hard. The charity gala was a big deal, the kind of exposure that could lead to more gigs and a stronger reputation. And now, that was all gone. The real kicker, though, was that I had a feeling Sarah would be there, witnessing the fallout. As if the universe was conspiring with me, I couldn't wait for her to learn that her little fling had serious consequences. But as the days turned into weeks, I realized that my plan was causing more than just financial strain for Mark. It was affecting Sarah, too. She became increasingly agitated, her mood swings more pronounced, and I could see her putting on a brave face as she tried to hide the pain of losing her fun relationship. But I wasn't done yet. I'd hear snippets from mutual friends about how Mark was struggling to book events and how Sarah was worried about his business. It felt good to know that my actions were taking root, but a part of me wondered if I was going too far. I reminded myself that she had brought this on herself. I just had to keep pushing forward until I was satisfied. Then, one night, Sarah came home after dinner with friends. She was clearly upset and surprised to find me still awake. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "Talk about what?" I replied coldly. "Mark." That name hung in the air like a thick fog. She was desperate to discuss the very man who had become the embodiment of my revenge. "Jake, he's really struggling," she said, her voice trembling. "I feel terrible about how everything turned out. He's lost so many gigs because of those reviews. I didn't realize how serious it was." At that moment, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. She was finally seeing the consequences of her actions, but it wasn't enough. I had to resist the urge to comfort her. Instead, I leaned forward, crossing my arms. "That's what happens when you betray your husband, Sarah," I said firmly. "You can't just play with people's lives and expect it to end well." Her eyes filled with tears as she tried to defend herself, but I cut her off, feeling the power I had over the situation. "You made your choice, now you have to deal with the fallout," as she crumbled. In front of me, I felt a flicker of remorse, but that flicker was quickly extinguished by the fire of vengeance that burned within me. I was committed to seeing this through. The weeks dragged on, and I watched as Sarah tried to mend the pieces of her life while grappling with the fallout from her affair. She seemed to waver between anger and despair. It was strange. Part of me almost felt sympathy for her. Yet, I couldn't shake the satisfaction of knowing that my actions had consequences. Every time I saw her sitting in silence, staring blankly at the television, I reminded myself how far she had pushed me. As she continued to struggle with the reality of what her choices had wrought, I found myself in a strange position. I had taken power back, but I was also witnessing the emotional toll it was taking on her. She was losing not just her fling with Mark, but also the life we had built together, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could just stand by and watch. But I had made my decision. This was her lesson to learn. One evening, I was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through social media when I stumbled upon a news article. The headline read, "Local caterer Mark Thompson's business faces closure amid scandal." My heart raced as I clicked on it. The article detailed how Mark's reputation had suffered due to the negative reviews that had plagued his business in the wake of the charity gala. It mentioned potential bankruptcy and how he was facing a tough uphill battle to recover. I couldn't help but feel a rush of vindication. This was everything I had hoped for. Even so, an unexpected pang of guilt hit me. I had taken things too far, hadn't I? Mark's mistakes didn't warrant ruining his entire livelihood. But then again, he also didn't have to cross the boundaries of my marriage. I shook my head to dispel the creeping doubt. Meanwhile, Sarah had taken to texting me more than ever, trying to rebuild bridges that I had set ablaze. "Can we talk about this?" she would say. "I want to make things right between us." But every time I looked at her messages, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. How could she even think I would want to have a conversation about anything after what she had done? One night she came home in tears. "Jake, I can't take this anymore," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for what I did. I thought it was just a fling and now it's ruined everything. I miss you. Can't we just have a real conversation?" Hearing her cry stung more than I anticipated. I didn't respond immediately, instead choosing to watch her as she wiped tears from her cheeks. It was painful to see her in such distress, but part of me still felt that she deserved this pain. She had created this mess, and it was her responsibility to face it. "Do you even get it?" I finally replied, my voice steady. "This isn't just about you and Mark, it's about us. You broke our trust. You threw everything away the moment you decided to cheat." She looked crushed, her eyes searching mine for any sign of forgiveness, but I had no intentions of easing her burden. "You thought you could have your fun without any consequences. Well, welcome to reality," I said coldly. As the days passed, Sarah continued to plead for reconciliation. She wanted to go to couples therapy, to talk things out and see if we could salvage our relationship. I saw the desperation in her eyes, but I also noticed that she was becoming increasingly frustrated with Mark's situation. She began to blame him for everything, claiming he manipulated her into the affair. It was infuriating to listen to her shift the blame, especially when I knew all too well that she had made her own choices. Then one day, she approached me with an idea. "What if we help him?" she suggested cautiously. "I mean, maybe we could talk to him and see if he's willing to fix things. It might help both of us." I was taken aback. This was a sudden shift and it made my blood boil. "Help him after everything he's done to us? Are you serious?" She tried to explain her reasoning, that maybe helping him rebuild his business could help her feel better about her own choices. But I wasn't buying it. "You want to help the man who betrayed us?" "You're delusional," I shot back. "You should be focusing on fixing our marriage, not his." But deep down, I could see the conflict in her. She was grappling with the guilt of what she had done, and now she wanted to play the savior. It was bizarre. I was the one who had been wronged, yet she was trying to shift the narrative back to her own guilt and pity. That night I felt more resolved than ever. I would not help Mark. Not now, not ever. I had come too far. The idea of reconciliation with Sarah, of helping her redeem herself, was off the table. I wanted her to live with the consequences of her choices, even if it meant experiencing the frustration of watching Mark's business demise. Weeks turned into months, and I could see the toll this entire situation was taking on Sarah. She became more withdrawn, her laughter absent from our home, and the spark that once ignited our life together had dimmed. I felt a strange satisfaction in knowing I had managed to inflict pain on both her and Mark, but I also began to wonder if this cycle of revenge would ever truly satisfy me. Then came the night of reckoning. I walked into the living room to find Sarah sitting on the couch, her face illuminated by the glow of her laptop. She was reading reviews, my reviews of Mark's business. The weight of the moment hit me like a tidal wave. "Jake, what have you done?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Only what you deserved," I replied, my heart racing. "You brought this on yourself." She looked defeated and betrayed yet again. "You thought this was going to fix anything. This isn't justice, it's just more pain." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time I found myself questioning everything. Was the pain I had inflicted worth it? Or had I turned into the very monster I was trying to fight? I needed to decide how far I was willing to go. The tension in the room crackled like static electricity, a heavy cloud of unresolved feelings hanging over us. I could see the realization dawning on Sarah's face, that my vengeful actions were not just a response to her betrayal but had spiraled into something far darker. "You're hurting yourself just as much as you're hurting him," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, something shifted within me. I had been so caught up in my revenge that I hadn't truly considered the implications of my actions. Yes, I had wanted to make Sarah feel the weight of her decisions, but at what cost? Was I becoming a vengeful shadow of the man I used to be? "Maybe I am," I replied, my voice shaky. "But that doesn't change what you did. You need to understand the gravity of your actions." Sarah looked me in the eye, her expression a mix of sadness and determination. "I do understand, Jake. I've been a horrible person and I'm sorry, but this isn't the way to handle it. You're better than this." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Deep down, I knew she was right. I had begun to lose sight of who I was in my quest for revenge. I wasn't just punishing Mark, I was punishing myself, allowing bitterness to seep into every corner of my life. "Maybe I'm just angry," I admitted, my voice trembling. "Maybe I don't know how to deal with this pain." "Then let's work through it together," she pleaded. "We can figure this out without destroying anyone else's life. I want to make things right between us, Jake. I want to be better." I wanted to believe her. There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with. But could I really trust her again? Could we rebuild what had been shattered? I took a deep breath, weighing the options in my mind. Anger still simmered beneath the surface, but it was beginning to evolve into something else. A realization that my actions had consequences I hadn't fully considered. Perhaps it was time to stop playing the victim and start taking control of my own life. "Okay," I said slowly, my heart racing. "But if we're going to try, I need you to be honest with me. No more lies, no more games. You need to show me that you truly regret what you've done." Sarah nodded vigorously, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I promise, Jake. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." That night marked a new beginning for us, though I had no illusion that it would be easy. The road to rebuilding our relationship would be long and fraught with difficulties, but it felt like a step in the right direction. We decided to go to couples therapy, and during our sessions, I learned to express my feelings more openly, while she began to confront the reasons behind her actions. It was uncomfortable but necessary. Each session peeled back layers of hurt and resentment, and slowly I started to feel a shift in our dynamic. Meanwhile, I made the decision to stop targeting Mark, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a part of me that wanted him to pay for his role in this mess. I managed to pull back my reviews and assured the organizers of the gala that I had been mistaken about him. I wasn't ready to forgive him, but I knew that it was only fair to allow him the opportunity to recover. As the weeks rolled into months, I watched as Mark began to rebuild his business. I saw a few positive reviews trickle in, and Sarah and I would often discuss what we had learned from our experiences. It was painful to acknowledge that while I had suffered from her betrayal, Mark had also been affected by my revenge. But there was still a sense of unease. I often wondered if Sarah was genuinely committed to our relationship or simply afraid of facing the consequences of her actions. Was she remorseful for hurting me, or was she more concerned about how it affected her? Eventually, I found myself facing a crossroads. One night, after a particularly intense therapy session, I sat on the balcony, pondering everything that had transpired. I could feel the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. I had the power to choose how to move forward, but I wasn't quite sure what that meant. Sarah joined me outside, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the moon. "You okay?" she asked gently. Just thinking, I replied, my gaze fixed on the stars. About everything about us, about Mark. I don't want to keep feeling this way, Sarah. She took a deep breath, and I could see the sincerity in her eyes. I know I hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I want to prove to you that I can be better. I want us to heal together. Her words resonated with me. I had a choice, to cling to the bitterness and resentment or to take a leap of faith and trust in the possibility of rebuilding. As much as I had wanted revenge, I realized that it was time to let go of that anger. I think I want to try, I said finally, my voice cracking. But it's going to take time. I need to know you're in this for the long haul. I promise, she affirmed, her voice filled with emotion. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm committed to making this work. In that moment, I understood that while the journey ahead would be challenging, it was also an opportunity for growth for both of us. I could begin to forgive not just Sarah but myself for all the hurt we had caused each other. And as I looked up at the stars, I felt a glimmer of hope, a sense of renewal. Maybe, just maybe, we could emerge from this darkness stronger together. As the days turned into weeks and then months, Sarah and I began to rebuild what had been shattered between us. Journey wasn't easy. There were still moments of anger, pain, and frustration, but we both committed to facing those feelings head-on. Therapy became a regular part of our lives, and while it pushed us out of our comfort zones, it also encouraged growth in ways I never expected. One of the most significant changes in our relationship was our communication. In the past, we had often taken each other for granted, allowing assumptions and misunderstandings to fester. Now, we had to talk. Even on the hard days, we faced each other and expressed our feelings openly. I found strength in vulnerability, and Sarah learned to own her mistakes without deflecting blame. As we navigated this rocky path, I began to notice the subtle changes in her, the way she looked at me, the little gestures of affection she began to show, and the renewed effort she put into our relationship. It felt like a slow but steady rediscovery of each other. I'd catch her smiling at me when she thought I wasn't looking, or she'd text me sweet notes during the day that made me light up. But the road to healing wasn't linear. There were nights when I'd wake up in a cold sweat, memories of the betrayal still fresh in my mind. It was during these moments that I had to remind myself of the work we were doing together, the steps we were taking to create a healthier relationship. It required patience, something I had to learn the hard way. One afternoon, I received an unexpected message from Mark. It was brief and to the point. "Hey Jake, I wanted to reach out to apologize for what happened. I never meant for things to get out of hand, and I regret the pain it caused you and Sarah." I held the phone in my hand, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to lash out to remind him of the chaos he had created, but another part of me recognized that anger wouldn't help me heal. I took a deep breath and decided on a different approach. I replied simply, "Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your message." It was liberating to let go of that hatred. I wasn't entirely over what had happened, but I was no longer letting it control my life. I began to understand that moving forward meant releasing the anger, both for my own sake and for Sarah's. A few weeks later, Sarah and I were sitting in our living room enjoying a quiet evening together. The atmosphere was warm and laughter filled the air as we shared stories. It struck me how far we had come. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I had fallen in love with, a woman who had made mistakes but was genuinely trying to make things right. "Do you think we'll ever fully get over this?" I asked, my voice low. "I don't know," she replied honestly, meeting my gaze, "but I believe we can learn from it. It's a part of our story now, and I want to write the next chapters together." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. We weren't going to erase the betrayal, but we could create something new from it. We could choose to learn and grow rather than dwell in bitterness. As time went on, I found myself forgiving not only Sarah but also myself. I realized that holding onto anger would only hinder our progress. I learned to accept that while I had been wronged, I didn't want to let that define who I was or the life I wanted to lead. A month later, we celebrated our wedding anniversary. It was a simple affair, but the warmth in our hearts made it special. We went to a place we both loved, a cozy little restaurant that had once been our favorite date spot. Although the atmosphere was filled with laughter and delicious aromas, it was here that I finally felt at peace. "Cheers to us," I said, raising my glass to Sarah. "To us," she echoed, her eyes sparkling. As we clinked our glasses and took sips of our wine, I felt grateful for the journey we had taken together. Through the pain and betrayal, we had emerged stronger. Our love was no longer the naive kind that glossed over problems. It was deeper, rooted in honesty and a commitment to face challenges together. We still had a long road ahead, but I no longer felt like I was walking it alone. Together, we made a choice every day to build our relationship on trust, respect, and understanding. And as we sat there, surrounded by the warmth of rekindled love, I knew we would face whatever came. Next, together. This was not just a story of betrayal and revenge. It was a tale of resilience, redemption, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds.